Welcome to Kawartha Backyard Farms, all you gorgeous garden gnomes. In this week's episode, I'm going to show you how I've set up our temporary rainwater collection system and how we are passively feeding that water into our drip irrigation.
I should probably start this video with a disclaimer. I don't really do how-to videos. At best, these are how I do it videos. And if we're being completely honest, they're probably more useful as how not to do it videos. I'm figuring most of this stuff out as I go, and occasionally that means I discover a better way immediately after I've already built something. So if you're looking for a polished engineering tutorial, you've come to the wrong channel. If you're looking for someone with a tractor, questionable confidence, and a tendency to learn lessons the expensive way, then welcome. For this project, I wanted to set up a rainwater collection system that could eventually supply water to the farm. Before I could do any of that though, I needed a reasonably level place for the water totes to sit. The area I picked wasn't terrible, but it wasn't flat. So I made a few passes with the tractor to break up the ground. There's something incredibly satisfying about using a tractor for a job that technically could be done by hand. Sure, a shovel would work, it would also take longer and involve actual effort. After loosening everything up, I just needed to smooth it out and create a stable surface. Now, level is a bit of a flexible term around here. I wasn't aiming for laser precision. I just wanted the totes to have a fighting chance of staying upright. Once I had the area mostly flattened out, it was time to figure out how to get some water pressure out of the system. My goal from the start was to make this setup as passive as possible. I didn't want pumps, I didn't want extension cords, I didn't want something that needed constant maintenance. I wanted gravity to do all of the work. Gravity has been doing a pretty good job for the last few billion years, so I figured I'd put it to work on the farm too. To make that happen, I knew water totes needed to be elevated. The higher the water sits, the more pressure you get. That's the basic plan. The challenge was finding something to raise them with. Fortunately, while wandering around the property, I found what can only be described as a pallet graveyard hiding in some tall grass. Luckily for me, they were still in decent shape. And since free is my favorite price, I dragged them over and started stacking. Now, before anybody points out that stacking pallets under a couple thousand pounds of water might not be the best idea, I definitely agree. But once those totes are full, they're not exactly going anywhere. At least that's what I told myself. So after some careful pallet engineering, which is just a fancy term for stacking things until they look stable, I got the totes up off the ground. Everything looked great, the system was coming together, I had collection tanks, I had elevation, I had confidence. And as you'll see, confidence is often the first sign that I'm about to make a mistake. At this point, I thought raising the totes a couple of feet would give me plenty of water pressure. Not because I calculated anything, not because I researched anything, mostly because it felt right. And that's where things started to go sideways. The water was technically flowing, but calling it pressure would be generous. The flow coming out of this thing was worse than my attempts at becoming a freestyle rapper. There was movement, but nobody was impressed. So let's stop for a minute and talk about why. And while we do that, enjoy this completely unnecessary shot of my backside. As it turns out, calculating water pressure from elevation is actually really simple. Simple enough that I probably should have done it before building the system. But then I wouldn't have learned anything and you wouldn't get this educational segment. To figure out the pressure created by a column of water, you take the height of the water in feet and multiply it by 0.433. That's it. That's the formula. So let's use this setup as an example. According to my driver's license, I'm 5'8". Now, whether that's still accurate is between me and the government. But for the sake of easy math, let's say the top of the water in these totes sits about 5 feet above the ground. 5 multiplied by 0.433 gives us 2.165 psi. And if you're wondering whether 2.165 psi is a lot, the answer is no, not even a little. For comparison, most household water systems operate somewhere around 40 to 60 psi. So my setup isn't exactly blasting water through the pipes. It's more like politely suggesting that water move in a particular direction. The drip irrigation system I'm planning to use has a pressure regulator that's rated to bring incoming pressure down to 12 psi. When I first saw that, I figured I was probably fine. Then I did the math. To get 12 psi using gravity alone, I'd need almost 28 feet of elevation. 28 feet. That's not a platform. That's basically a water tower. And while I'd love to build one, I'd also like to avoid becoming a local news story for the wrong reasons. Thankfully, drip irrigation doesn't actually require that much pressure to function. Many systems can work at much lower pressures, especially if the runs are short. So the setup isn't a complete failure, it's just not nearly as powerful as I imagined, which honestly describes a lot of my projects. The next question I've gotten a bunch of times is how quickly these totes will fill up from rainfall. The short, smart-ass answer is as fast as it rains. Thank you for watching. No, but honestly, if we want a real answer, it's actually a pretty straightforward calculation. What we're really calculating is the volume of water falling onto a roof. Let's use this little roof as an example. The roof is approximately 1 meter wide and 3 meters long. So we've got a collection area of 3 square meters. Now let's say we get 25 millimeters of rain. That's about 1 inch for the people who still measure things using body parts and historical accidents. 25 millimeters is 2.5 centimeters. To find the volume of water collected, we multiply the length, width, and rainfall depth. So 3 meters is 300 centimeters times 100 centimeters times 3.5 centimeters. That gives us 75,000 cubic centimeters, which sounds absolutely massive. 75,000 of anything sounds impressive. The problem is that cubic centimeters are tiny. 1 liter of water equals 1,000 cubic centimeters. So if we divide by 1,000, we discover that we actually collected 75 liters of water. That's still useful, but it's a lot less exciting than 75,000. And it also means filling these totes is going to take a while. Each tote holds 1,000 liters. So if I want them to fill quickly, I'm going to need a much larger roof area collecting rain. The good news is that now I know the numbers. The bad news is that the numbers don't care about my optimism. For now, though, the system is built, is collecting water, and it's teaching me a few lessons along the way. Some of those lessons probably could have been learned before construction started, but where's the fun in that? So the next step will be seeing how well this setup performs over time, how much water it actually collects, and whether gravity can do enough work to keep the crops happy. And if not, I'll just add it to the growing list of projects that seemed like a really good idea at the time. Either way, we'll find out together.
Do you work for a company that believes in giving back? Every season, we're growing food here at our free farm and giving it all away to local food banks. We are currently looking for sponsors who want to make a difference while connecting with a community of gardeners, farmers, and other people who are passionate about local food and food security. If that sounds like you and your company, please reach out to us at kawarthebackyardfarms@gmail.com to learn more about our sponsorship opportunities. Your logo could be right here. So here is our filter and pressure regulator for our irrigation system, and we're just going to plug our hose in. If I can remember which way things get screwed together. Now we have a pressure regulator. Not that we really need to regulate any of the pressure because the water totes aren't very high up off the ground, but eventually I'm sure I will, and sometimes that'll happen. Eventually I will raise the height of the water totes so that we will get more pressure. But let's try to get this back on here. We might have to heat this up so that it will expand a little bit more. And that's what I'm gonna have to do. I'm gonna see if I can leave that in the sun to warm up, and then we'll try to get that on there. So actually what I think I'm gonna do is just try to squish it and see if that'll help to soften up this tube. It does seem to be going on a little bit more. Alright, we'll turn the water on and see if that works. We're going to go down to the end here, see if any water comes out. Nothing yet. Okay, so there's water getting to here. Obviously, no pressure. Let's go back down. Alright, that took a minute, but we got water. If you hold it below the level of the water totes. So we're going to take one of these little caps. So you press it in to the end of your tube, and then you twist the blue part here, and it'll tighten it on there. So I'm going to get a little bit wet. And then this one is just going to be temporary because we do have to extend this tubing to go down the field further, but we still don't want it to pop off. So now we've got a good portion of our main line or distribution tubing down. That's about 50 feet, so we'll probably get another tubing of 50 feet to finish out the rest of this field. And now we can add in our valves to connect the drip tape to the distribution tube. And to do that, we're going to need this little yellow tool. It's got a little punch, little sharp punch on it there. So we're going to go and punch holes into the distribution tubing, and then we can push the valves. Little, I don't know if you call them T-valves or whatever, but they just, that's open, and then that'll be closed, and then we can select which beds will get water when, and then we just have to go around and open the tubing or open the valves. So I ran out of drip tape that was on the long roll. So I've got these pieces that I was using at home before, and we'll just have to use some connectors to connect them up. But we'll get the squash irrigated up, shove that on there, twist it down tight, and then we're going to need 2 connectors for this one and 1 stopper. And I've been told that with your irrigation, your drip line, you want to make sure that your lines, your emitters, are pointing up. Apparently it helps to keep them cleaner. So hopefully that is the truth, and we'll get a longer lifespan out of these. Twist to tighten. There we go. Last one here. And twist to tighten. We're still battling these cucumber beetles. They are an absolute nightmare right now. So we've got that closed up now, and these should be happier plants. The other thing that you want to make sure that you do is to keep your drip line nice and close to your plants so that the water isn't going to other crops, weeds mostly, and it is getting as close to those roots of your crop as you can. Alright, so we've got a bit of a leak here at one of our tanks. So I'm going to try to fix that. Close the water off temporarily to the drip line. Oh, I need a screwdriver. And to sort of fix this, what I'm thinking is to just wrap this with some Teflon tape, and hopefully that will do the trick. And then we want to make sure that this band is right around that Teflon tape and not too far past it and not in front of it. There. Okay, moment of truth. We'll give it a minute or so. I think it's gonna hold. There, I think we fixed it.